Have you ever wondered why some people seem to sabotage themselves just when you're finally from their control? Imagine discovering that the person who once dominated your every thought, your every decision, has been quietly studying your psychological patterns for years, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy their most devastating weapon against you. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist who mapped the darkest corners of the human psyche, uncovered a chilling truth about narcissists that most people never. When they realize they can't control you anymore, they don't just walk away quietly into the night. Instead, they orchestrate one final, calculated assault on your newfound freedom that's so subtle, so perfectly timed, that even the strongest survivors fall right back into their web of manipulation. What Jung discovered changed how you see every relationship in your life. The moment you think you've finally escaped, the moment you believe unbreakable boundaries and reclaimed your power, that's precisely with surgical precision. Watching, waiting, documenting every karma, every trigger that makes you abandon your hard-won strength. And the most terrifying part, they don't just want to control you again. They want to prove transformation was nothing more than a temporary rebellion. That deep down, you're still the same person who once lived for their approval. Jung spent decades studying what he called the shadow aspects of human nature, the pose we hide from the world and often from ourselves. But in Narcissist, he discovered something far more sinister than mere self-deception. Individuals who had weaponized their understanding of human psychology, turning empathy itself into a tool for domination. When you were weak, confused, seeking validation, you served their purpose perfectly. Psychological supply, their emotional feeding ground. But the moment you start healing, the moment you own instincts over their version of reality, something shifts in their psyche that Jung called the power inversion crisis. Feelings or wounded pride. According to Jung's research, narcissists operate from what he inflated ego, a psychological state where they must constantly prove their superiority to avoid confronting the terrifyingness within themselves. Your strength doesn't just threaten their control over, it threatens their entire identity, their carefully constructed delusion of superiority. And when that happens, they're back. They declare logical war. The weapon is so sophisticated that it can destroy years of healing in a matter of weeks. It's designed to make you question everything you've learned about yourself, every boundary set, every moment of clarity you've achieved. They study your growth like a predator studies its prey, exactly which aspects of your transformation make you most proud, which victories mean the most to you. Then they systematically target those very strengths, turning your greatest achievements into sources of shame and self-doubt. But here's what makes this mission so devastating. It doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like concern, like love, like someone who truly cares about what's happening to you. They've learned to disguise their desperation for control as worry for your well-being. They've mastered the art of making their need to dominate you sound like genuine care for your happiness, and know you better than almost anyone because they've had a front row seat to your fears and insecurities. They know exactly which buttons to push to make you doubt everything you've worked so hard to build. What's coming next in this exploration will reveal the exact techniques they use, the specifics they say, and the precise timing they choose to launch their final assault on your independence. Jung's research shows us not just how they manipulate, but why it works so effectively on even the strongest survivors. More importantly, he discovered how to recognize these tactics before they can destroy your progress, and how to protect the precious psychological territory you fought so hard to reclaim. Jung's research reveals that when narcissists sense they're losing control, they don't just resort to their old tactics of gaslighting or playing the victim. Those techniques worked when you were vulnerable. But now that you've found your strength, they need something more sophisticated. They launch what Jung described as a systematic assault on your individuation process, the psychological journey of becoming your authentic self. The first wave of this attack targets your newfound strength itself, but in a way that's so subtle, you might not even recognize it as manipulation. Remember how they used to criticize your weaknesses, your insecurities, your failures? Now they completely flip the script. They start targeting the very qualities you've worked hardest to develop. If you've learned to set healthy boundaries, they'll tell you you've become cold and uncaring. If you found your voice and learned to speak up for yourself, they'll accuse you of being aggressive and confrontational. If you've built genuine confidence and self-worth, they'll claim you've become arrogant and think you're better than everyone else. Jung called this technique strength shaming, and it's far more dangerous than traditional criticism because it attacks the foundation of your healing. Traditional insults target your weaknesses, but strength shaming targets your victories. It's designed to make you ashamed of the very qualities that set you free. The narcissist knows that if they can make you doubt your growth, if they can convince you that your strength is actually a character flaw, you'll voluntarily return to the version of yourself that was easier to control. But Jung discovered something even more insidious about this manipulation. It's not random criticism designed to hurt your feelings. It's strategically crafted to target your specific growth areas. They've been watching your transformation, taking mental notes about which changes have brought you the most peace and confidence. Then they systematically attack those exact qualities, using your own progress against you. They know that deep down, you still have moments of doubt about your growth, moments when you wonder if you're really as strong as you think you are, and they exploit those moments of vulnerability with surgical precision. When strength shaming begins to lose its effectiveness because you're starting to see through their tactics, they deploy what Jung termed nostalgic manipulation. This is where they start reminiscing about the old you, the version of yourself that was easier to manipulate and control. I'll say things like, remember when you used to laugh at my jokes? You were so much happier then. Or I miss the person you used to be. You were so much more fun before you started reading all those self-help books. They might even say, we had such a good relationship before you changed. Things were so much better between us back then. According to Jung, this is psychological time travel, designed to pull you back into old patterns of behavior. They're not actually missing the real you, they're missing the controllable you, the version of yourself that lived for their approval and validation. The dangerous part is that they often succeed in making you miss that version of yourself, too. They paint a picture of your past self that's so appealing, so free from the complications of growth and change, that you start to wonder if maybe you were happier when you were weaker. But Jung's research reveals the sinister truth behind nostalgic manipulation. The narcissist isn't remembering your past accurately. They're selectively recalling moments when you were most compliant, most eager to please, most willing to sacrifice your own needs for their comfort. They're not nostalgic for your happiness. They're nostalgic for their control over you. And they're betting that if they can make those moments seem more appealing than your current strength, you'll voluntarily give up your power to recreate that dynamic. The combination of strength shaming and nostalgic manipulation creates a powerful psychological double bind. On one hand, they're telling you that your growth has made you a worse person. On the other hand, they're painting a picture of your weaker self as more lovable and appealing. This creates internal conflict that can be devastating to your sense of self. You start to question whether your journey of healing was worth it, whether the person you're becoming is as good as the person you used to be. Jung understood that narcissists are masters of creating this kind of internal confusion because they've studied your psychology so thoroughly. They know exactly which memories will trigger your nostalgia, which criticisms will make you doubt your growth, and which combination of tactics will be most effective in pulling you back into their orbit. But this is still just the beginning of their final manipulation. When both strength shaming and nostalgic manipulation fail to completely break down your boundaries, narcissists deploy their most dangerous and sophisticated weapon. Jung called this manufactured vulnerability. And it's the dirty trick that catches even the most aware survivors off guard. This is where the narcissist suddenly becomes fragile, struggling or going through an intense crisis right at the moment when you're at your psychological strongest. The timing isn't coincidental, it's calculated with the precision of a military operation. Jung discovered that narcissists are masterful at recognizing your deepest compassions and using them as weapons against your healing. They've spent years studying what triggers your caretaking instincts, what makes you feel guilty for focusing on your own needs, and what causes you to abandon your carefully constructed boundaries. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push to transform you from a strong, independent person back into their personal crisis manager and emotional support system. The crisis they present might be a sudden health scare, unexpected financial trouble, dramatic family problems, or an emotional breakdown. But Jung's research revealed something chilling about these emergencies. They often appear right when you're experiencing your greatest personal victories, when you're feeling most confident in your growth, or when you're on the verge of a major breakthrough in your independence. This timing isn't bad luck or coincidence. It's strategic psychological warfare designed to pull you back into the caretaker role just when you're closest to complete freedom. What makes manufactured vulnerability so devastating is that it weaponizes your own empathy against your healing. Your compassion, which is one of your greatest strengths, becomes the very thing that traps you back in their web of control. They know that even though you've learned to set boundaries, even though you've grown stronger, you still have a good heart. And they exploit that goodness by creating situations where helping them seems like the only moral choice, where maintaining your boundaries feels selfish and cruel. But Jung discovered something even more disturbing about this manipulation. Narcissists don't just wait for random crises to occur. They often manufacture these emergencies by creating the very problems they're asking you to help them solve. They'll sabotage their own relationships, their work performance, their financial stability, even their health, anything to create a situation where you feel obligated to step in and rescue them. According to Jung's research, this serves multiple psychological purposes for the narcissist. First, it pulls you back into the familiar dynamic where you're responsible for their well-being, where your worth is measured by how much you sacrifice for them. Second, it proves to them that they still have power over you, that despite all your growth and strength, they can still make you abandon your boundaries when they really need you to. Third, and most importantly, it allows them to test whether your transformation is real or just a temporary phase they can break through with enough pressure. The requests they make during these manufactured crises are specifically designed to compromise the very boundaries and values you've worked hardest to establish. They'll say things like, "I know you don't usually lend money, but this situation is different." Or, "I know you said you needed space, but I really need you right now." Or, "I know you're trying to focus on yourself, but couldn't you just help me this once?" Jung observed that every "just this once" is actually a test designed to break down the psychological barriers you've built to protect your well-being. Jung discovered that the most insidious aspect of manufactured vulnerability is how genuine it can feel. The narcissist might actually be experiencing a real crisis, but they're experts at choosing which crisis to share with you and when to share it. They have other people they could call, other resources they could tap into, but they come to you because they know you're the one who's most likely to sacrifice your hard-won boundaries to help them. They know your history, your triggers, your deepest fears about being selfish or uncaring, and they use all of that knowledge to make their request impossible to refuse. The final piece of this manipulation is what Jung called the sacrifice test. They don't just want your help, they want you to prove that they still matter more than your own well-being by giving up something important to you. They want you to cancel plans you've been looking forward to, spend money you've been saving for your own goals, or compromise values you fought hard to establish. The helping isn't really about solving their crisis. It's about proving that when push comes to shove, you'll still choose their needs over your own growth and happiness. Understanding the true nature of manufactured vulnerability is crucial because it reveals the narcissist's final desperate attempt to reclaim control over you. They're not reaching out because they genuinely need your help. They're reaching out because they can't accept that you've grown beyond their influence. Your strength threatens their entire identity, and they're willing to create chaos in their own life just to prove they can still make you prioritize their drama over your peace. Jung's research provides us with the key to protecting ourselves from this final manipulation through what he called differentiated compassion. This concept revolutionizes how we understand the relationship between empathy and self-preservation. You can feel genuine empathy for someone's struggles without feeling responsible for solving them. You can care about their pain without sacrificing your own well-being to fix it. You can maintain your boundaries while still being a compassionate person. The crucial insight Jung offers is this: helping someone shouldn't require you to abandon your values, compromise your boundaries, or sacrifice your own growth. If someone's request for help comes with the implicit demand that you prove your care by giving up something important to you, that's not a request for genuine help. It's a manipulation designed to test your loyalty and break down your psychological defenses. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. When a narcissist tries to pull you back into old patterns through manufactured crisis, you have to ask yourself a fundamental question. Is helping them helping me become who I truly am, or is it preventing me from that journey? If helping them requires you to abandon your authentic self, to ignore your own needs, or to compromise the values you fought to establish, then you're not helping them. You're enabling their continued avoidance of responsibility while sabotaging your own growth. Jung's final insight about narcissists will transform how you understand every relationship in your life. He discovered that narcissists fear your strength because it reminds them of their own potential for growth, potential they've abandoned in favor of control and manipulation. When you refuse to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, when you maintain your boundaries despite their manufactured emergencies, you're not just protecting yourself, you're showing them what's possible. When someone chooses authenticity over approval, growth over comfort, truth over the familiar patterns of dysfunction, every time you resist their manipulation, every time you maintain your boundaries despite their crisis, you're proving that their power over you was always an illusion. You're demonstrating that their control was only effective as long as you believed you needed their approval to be worthy of love and respect. Your refusal to be manipulated back into old patterns is evidence of your psychological freedom, proof that you've genuinely transformed into someone who values their own well-being enough to protect it. Jung understood that true strength isn't about being immune to manipulation or never feeling compassion for others' struggles. Real strength is about recognizing manipulation when it appears, naming it for what it is, and choosing your authentic self anyway. It's about understanding that someone else's crisis doesn't automatically become your responsibility, especially when helping them requires you to abandon everything you've learned about taking care of yourself. The narcissist's final dirty trick only works if you forget who you are now, if you allow their manufactured emergency to convince you that the old version of yourself was somehow better or more worthy. But once you see manufactured vulnerability for what it truly is, a desperate attempt to reclaim control over someone who has grown beyond their influence, you realize that their very need to manipulate you is actually proof of how powerful you've become. Their desperation to pull you back into old patterns is evidence that you've successfully broken free from their psychological control. Carl Jung discovered that the moment you stop being controllable is the moment you truly begin living as your authentic self. And no manufactured crisis, no matter how convincing or emotionally manipulative, is worth trading that freedom away. Your growth threatens them because it reminds them of the person they could have become if they had chosen healing over control. But their journey is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to protect the precious psychological territory you fought so hard to reclaim and to continue becoming the person you were always meant to be.